This is art. Any recovery topic is art. Joining me today is Dan, and this will be our musician episode, our first one. So, welcome, Dan. Let's go ahead and get started. You're a musician. Tell us a little bit about what you do, what you play, and if you're solo or if you play in bands.
I do both. I'm known as the acoustic man. I do solo acoustic shows by myself and play guitar and sing. Sometimes do bass and sing, and I'm also in bands as well. Usually lead singer, guitar player in in uh, in different bands.
And you're also in recovery.
Yes.
And how long have you been in recovery?
11 and a half years.
It's nothing to sneeze at.
Well, compared to a lot of the other people in the program, that's not too long.
Now, in your years of substance use, did you stick with just one thing like drinking, or did you do different things across the board?
Yeah, I was known as what they call a garbage can, where I
Oh, like Oscar.
yeah, I was like Oscar the Grouch. I uh, I did everything. I just and being a musician, you got people just offering you stuff and sticking stuff in your pockets and here, take this, here, grab, here, take this.
Did
So you got a
you,
lot of free. It's hard to turn down free drugs, drinks.
granted,
Whenever I did my chemical history, they call it at Gateway, um, I had to go through and all the different drugs I did. There was like over 20 some different drugs that I had consumed.
did you play music before you got into drugs and alcohol?
Yeah.
For quite a while? Did you start at a young age?
Not really. I was one of the people in my neighborhood that started later. Like I come from an area where there's a lot of musicians.
What area is that?
Well, I grew up in Brackenridge, which is only a square mile, uh, but a lot of musicians in that area, um, and even in the Natrona Heights and Tarentum area, there was a lot of musicians, and I kind of so when I started, a lot of people were already starting. You know what I mean? I started off like kind of roadieing for bands, and doing sound checks and stuff.
Was this the introduction to drugs and alcohol in being around musicians and being around the
It
environment?
probably was. I remember being at a band practice or a party that one of the bands had, and I remember them having a lot of cocaine. And I was very young. It was very scary, and I ran out of there real quick. I remember that. I was just thinking about that the other day. I was like, wow, man, like, remember when you first saw cocaine? It was like almost like this bad energy with it. You know, I was probably still in high school, you know.
I heard a comedian one time say, "Why do you take cocaine?" "Well, because it enhances my personality." Well, what if you're an asshole? You know?
Yeah. Yeah. So that was scary.
So did it take long before the drugs and the alcohol took full effect and just blown up?
It did.
Really?
It did, because I used to be Mr. Anti-Drugs. I didn't do any drugs or drink. I didn't want to be a drug addict or an alcoholic. I didn't want to be known as one. You know what I mean? Just, I wanted to be a good boy. You know, I was raised well, I guess. I'd like to think my parents were good parents, but it was one of those things where I'm a weirdo, so everybody thought I was on drugs anyway. You know what I mean? So, and I had long hair.
Really?
Yeah, I had real long hair, and I would always be doing weird stuff and goofing around and being myself. And I take after my dad. He's goofy, and so I had a pretty outgoing personality and pretty wild and always doing stuff. So I would get harassed by the police, and people would always be accusing me of being on drugs anyway.
So when you got into recovery and it was suggested to make changes, was the hair the first thing to make the change? Long hair to no hair?
No, actually,
How long was it?
I was balding like way before that, and I just ended up having some friends of mine just shave my head.
Like, how long was it?
Oh, how long was the hair?
Yeah.
It was like, I don't know. It was past my shoulders. I can't
Really?
remember. It wasn't like super long. Like some of my friends had it down pretty long. It wasn't long, but it was long. But it was like past my shoulders,
I don't know why hair keeps coming up in these podcasts for some reason. I mean, it's probably me, but anyway. So when you got into the drugs and the alcohol, did it interfere with your playing, or do you think that it enhanced your musical ability?
I think a little bit of both. I started off smoking marijuana, because some other friends of mine who were also musicians, they're like, "Oh, well, it's a plant. It's from God, like, come on." So I started off smoking marijuana, and I felt that it, relaxed me or made me, it made me, use that other part of my brain, But of course, later on, I wouldn't smoke marijuana before a show because I didn't want it interfering with my voice or my vocals. I didn't want it drying out my throat or anything, because I learned from taking vocal lessons that smoke irritates your vocal cords and stuff. So I would never smoke before a show, but I'd always have one rolled up or something right after the show. But I found out later on from drinking, and then later on I learned that drinking some ginger brandy actually helps, the throat, and helps me, helps would actually help me relax or have a beer before the show. So I would never get totally tanked. Well, no, I don't want to say never, but
maybe in the beginning.
In the beginning,
yeah.
Then later
towards
on,
the end, it was like, I'll have a bottle of that ginger brandy before I go on stage.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's what happened to me, because that was the same thing that happened to me when I started playing music. I started playing music before I really got blown out with drugs and alcohol. And, later on, as the years went on, the drugs and the alcohol really took full effect. And I was just getting loaded before. Well, I just stayed loaded. So
right.
Anytime I'd play, and I remember there were a couple of shows where, I had only been there once because after I performed, they didn't want me back.
Right.
Because I was,
Me too.
I don't have full memory of everything that I did, but clearly it was bad enough that they asked me not to come back. But then
I remember.
Yeah,
I was like playing music and playing songs and thinking about another song, and I was out of my mind. And then, I'm also like slurring my speech, trying to sing. That was just a mess.
What song is that?
I don't know what song it was, but yeah, I'd be, and then, people would just keep bringing up shots. Hey, play, here's a shot, play this song, bringing up shots. Load me up with shots of alcohol, and I'd be tanked by the end, and then, I wouldn't be allowed to come back.
Yeah, I was like that too. People would just buy you beers. They figured out what you're drinking because you got it next to on a speaker or something, and
Right.
they'll be like handing you a beer or whatever, And then I'd be so sloshed that I would even just get on the microphone. Who's gonna buy me a beer? Next thing
I
I
would
know,
do that too.
did you?
Yeah,
Yeah, it
yeah.
must be a
It's like,
musician
can I get
thing,
a
I
drink,
guess.
please?
Yeah, yeah.
Or I'd
So,
even have or even when I'll be on stage, I would have one of the bar waitresses have my back or whatever, bring me up a beer or something, when I needed one.
so how many years did that last roughly for you, where you were drinking and doing other substances with a heavy workload and also playing music?
Huh. That's a good question. I've been a musician, successful, luckily, for about 30 years. But I remember not really, well, it wasn't that whole entire time. But I still was using substances, so maybe that whole time. But it didn't start getting ugly till probably the last 10 years. No, no, not the last 10 years because I'm still doing it, and I've been sober and
The
clean.
last 10 years of the run of addiction, it was pretty bad though,
Yeah,
huh?
probably that. So it'd be that in between. Yeah, I guess roughly a little over a decade I've been sober and clean as a musician, and probably 10 years or more, 10, 15, 20 years in active addiction. You know,
So
it kind of goes with the territory.
how did you end up uh, leaving it behind? How did you end up deciding to get clean and sober?
Well, it was killing me. The alcohol. I became a full blown alcoholic, um, and it was killing me. Um, and I actually got thrown out, or I don't know if should call it that, but let's just say I got thrown out of the band I was in because of my alcoholism. It kind of wasn't like that, but kind of. It's kind of a complicated situation. Like we had some shows, and I guess, I was being a mess, and they ended up just canceling the show, and the band kind of fell apart. But they kind of just got some other people to replace me, and then
Was that the turning point then? Was that
no, no, I was a full blown alcoholic. I could not quit drinking. You know, um,
so? What happened? What made you really make that decision to leave it behind and to try to make that attempt at getting clean and sober?
well, you know what they say. You get sick and tired of being sick and tired. You know what I mean? Like I was suffering for such a long time, blacking out, going through withdrawals, shaking, waking up, and in pools of blood. From falling down and busting my head open. And
No puke like me?
oh, I'd throw up, yeah, among other things. I was that guy that I would wake up on the side of the road in a ditch. I've had some DUIs, and I was, getting in fights. I was even telling somebody yesterday, I was like, I've never been in a fight in my life, and I'm probably the most nonviolent person that I know. And I don't even know how to fight, but when I'd be drinking, I'd be wanting to fight people. It's like, how does that happen?
Hulk
Yeah, it's
smash!
so weird. So yeah, I was just a mess, and I was just suffering from the addiction, just so bad. Just like it nearly killed me. It really did. But I was on a self destruct thing. You know, I was Mister Self Destruct.
So
You
you
know,
just woke up one day and decided that was it? You were going to make a change?
well, I was. Well, here's the thing. Like I was suicidal, so I was trying to kill myself with alcohol, and I learned that it takes a lot to kill a person. So I was like, well, this isn't working. You know, I just got sick of suffering, and the lady I was living with died while I was living there of partying. We were drinking, and she died. We were while I was there. We were partying and drinking, and I found her dead in the bathroom. Had to call the police and everything, and then I had to move out of her place. And friends of mine started. I remember a friend of mine telling me that everybody was really worried about me, and that kind of touched me, that I had people that loved me,
So you made the decision then.
Yeah. It was just I just couldn't go on living like that. I was like a total piece of crap. I just the police knew who I was. I was always public drunkenness. Like I went from becoming a well loved member of my community and being a musician, an entertainer, to being public enemy number one. I always call it. There was just. I went from being a popular guy to being a popular piece of shit guy,
Been there, done that.
Yeah. So
how did you transition? How did you already know what to do as far as getting the help that you needed, or did you have to ask around? Did you make phone calls?
Yeah, I didn't know what to do when I kept going to. I was in probably every hospital in the tri-state area here in Pittsburgh, and I was probably at Allegheny Valley Hospital about 20 times for withdrawal, thinking I was going to die. They told me there that it was a good thing that I was going there because you could die from alcohol withdrawal. This is one of the only drugs you can actually die from withdrawal from. So I was lucky to go there, and they would tell me to get to the meetings. They would, you need to go to some meetings. You need to go to AA, and you need to go to, but it was one of those things where I was still drinking. You really don't want to be going to AA meetings cranked off your ass, crawl. Like I did a lead the other day, and I was telling people, I was like, I'd be crawling. I would have to crawl in to the meeting. I'd be probably crawling on my hands and knees. That's how bad shape I was, So, and I never thought that I would have to go into a rehab, As you know, me and you both work in the same facility where we get a lot of alcoholics in our facility, in our rehab facility.
Mm-hmm.
I never knew that at the time, because I thought it was just strictly for drug addicts, So I had to check myself in. It took about a year to find a place to go.
And who helped you navigate that?
My dad.
Okay. It's amazing how much support we get from loved ones when we're ready to reach out and try to get the help. There's so many people that are ready to be supportive that during that phase of that heavy addiction, we don't think we have it, but when we ask, they're there. There are people that love us that will absolutely answer that call and be like, yes, I will help you.
That was another thing. Like me and my dad were real close, and like we're like real good friends. We'd go bicycling together and do things together. He was he was even the best man at my wedding. He and then our relationship got horrible because of my addictions and alcoholism.
And
so that broke his heart, broke my heart.
Is he still alive?
Yeah.
And
just talked to him today. Yeah.
So the relationship is much better.
Yeah.
Being clean and sober.
Yeah, I mentioned something about the past. He's like, "Yeah, don't remind me." He said.
Yeah.
I was like, "Sorry again about all that." I said to him on the phone.
So let's talk about the sober musician.
Right.
Looking back at the years that you played and may have recorded during the use of the substances, and looking at any recordings now versus then, do you see a difference in the quality or the passion? Do you think that it's better now being sober than the years of the substance use?
That's interesting. I really don't know. I think it's almost the same. Um, it's funny you mentioned the recording, because when I was writing music and recording, I always made it a point to do drugs. In fact, I would label the recording based on what drugs I was on.
Oh, wow.
It's like, this is the cocaine tape. This is the marijuana. This is the,
Wow.
yeah. That would be like, this is the music that I wrote while I was on, the cocaine tapes, or the marijuana sessions or something. I would name. And there was a lot of creative, really good stuff written back then. A lot of really good, it was all experimental, a lot of really good stuff. I still enjoy, a lot of that stuff's great.
So I listened back to some of the recordings that I made during those years of my substance use, and I can honestly say, wow, that was I like that one. And
Yeah.
I can also hear other ones where I'm like, I don't really care for that one. And when I compare them to material that I've created since being clean and sober, I can say that I have equal amount of material that I like in both eras.
Yeah.
I have material that I like during my substance use years. I have material that I like in my clean and sober years. There's one difference. My level of appreciation of any of it is at a much higher level now that I'm clean and sober. I can appreciate things deeper and more meaningful than I was capable of doing back then. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because drugs and alcohol just erases any kind of emotion out of you. So, probably it was like probably that, appreciation, it probably didn't even exist probably when you were, although I'd be like, oh, that's really great. But
well, now as a recovering musician, not recovering musician, but a musician in recovery, big difference there.
Recovering musician.
Big difference there. In the beginning, did you try to avoid playing in bars or with people that were in active addiction?
No.
How did you find yourself navigating through the temptations during that early time?
Well, it was kind of tough. I remember having a show performing at the casino in Pittsburgh. It was actually on my 3-month anniversary. So I was only sober and clean for 3 months. It was like the day, too, the night. And these guys were even trying to buy me drinks. Like, hey, let's celebrate. And I almost did. So I was like, oh, yeah, let's celebrate your sobriety, your 3-month sobriety. And I was like, I can't do that, So it was kind of weird. And I even, people were even warning me. It's like, what are you going to do about playing music in bars?
Yeah, because a lot of musicians who get sober want to know how, if I make the choice to get clean and sober, do I have to give this up? Like, how does somebody navigate that?
Well, when I joined AA and I got out of rehab, and my sponsor told me about there's some pages in the big book, the Alcoholics Anonymous book, that helped with that. Because a lot of people in AA were shunning me and getting on me And they would say, what was the saying? If you keep going to the barber shop, you're going to eventually get a haircut. Right.
It looks like you got a
Yeah,
haircut.
yeah. And I'd be like, well, I don't have any hair anyway. But that's a metaphor for if you keep going to the bar,
right,
you're going to end up drinking. So I've lived the rest of my music career based on these passages in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. I'd like to read, if you don't mind, if we have time. And they quote this too. This is really good, and this actually helps. And a lot of people are unaware of this, I think, because I keep having to explain to people in the program. So it says, assuming we are spiritually fit, we can do all sorts of things alcoholics are not supposed to do, which is like go to bars and play music in bars. People have said that we must not go where liquor is served, especially people in the program. We must not have it in our homes. We must shun friends who drink. We must avoid moving pictures which show drinking scenes. We must not go into bars. Our friends must hide their bottles if we go to their houses. And we mustn't think or be reminded about alcohol at all. Our experience shows that this is not necessarily so, it says. And it says that in our belief, any scheme of combating alcoholism which proposes to shield the sick man from temptation is doomed to failure. Now, this was written in the 1930s. What that means is if you're going to stay away from alcohol in recovery, you can fail, is what that's saying. If the alcoholic tries to shield himself, he may succeed for a time, but he usually winds up with a bigger explosion than ever. We have tried these methods. These attempts to do the impossible have always failed. So our rule is not to avoid a place where there is drinking. Now this is the highlighted part written in italics. If we have a legitimate reason for being there, that's important. That includes bars, nightclubs, dances, receptions, weddings. To a person who has had experience with an alcoholic, this may seem like tempting providence, but it isn't. Ask yourself on each occasion, have I any good social, business, or personal reason for going to this place? Or am I expecting to steal a little vicarious pleasure from the atmosphere of such place? Which means, am I going to the bar because I like being in bars and I want to smell the alcohol and, look at the alcohol, be around people that are drinking, which is an unhealthy way of looking at it? Or am I going there to have dinner or play music?
right.
As being a musician, it's a job too.
Mm-hmm.
So, we get paid money to do it, and it's a lot of work. And so I'm there to do a job, So I actually kept going to bars. I was on a team that would do Name That Tune. I was on a Name That Tune team, and even a few of the guys on the team didn't drink alcohol as well. And of course, it was at the bar. So, I wasn't the only one not drinking. But, everybody in AA, only a couple months of sobriety, people were like, what are you doing? You're going to fail. You're going to, which is, it's not a good thing. But being that I felt I was, in a good place.
See, that's what I can relate to, because not only being a musician, I also DJ, and I would do weddings and whatnot, and people would offer me, hey, come and have a shot with us and this and that. And yeah, so it was, the temptation was definitely there. But one thing that
It
I can,
still is too. Yeah.
and it still is, and it still is. But one thing that I can know for sure from my own experience, and it sounds like you have the same experience, is that during these tempting times in our early recovery, we knew we had a foundation under us to support our path of where we wanted to be going, which was for us 12-step programs and recovery as
Right.
that goal. And I knew what I wanted. I knew I wanted to change. I didn't want to be a suffering person addicted to drugs and alcohol anymore. So I knew now who I was. I knew I had the support of my 12-step program.
Right.
And it can be done. You and I are two examples to show that it can be done.
Oh yeah.
You have over a decade of clean and sober time. I have coming up on a decade.
Nice.
And it can be done.
Absolutely.
Working musicians, whatever kind, entertainment, live entertainment in the field of being around drugs and alcohol, and it can be done. As long as you have that support built up underneath of you, right? And as long as you stay on that correct path, it can be navigated.
I want to add something to that, like being the fact that when I was 3 months sober and I had the strength, or my higher power gave me the strength, as they may say, to turn down those shots of alcohol at the casino, that really reinforced my ability to continue doing it. Because I was like, look, I'm only 3 months sober, and I'm at a bar getting ready to have shots with these guys because they liked my show and they want to celebrate, and I was able to turn it down. I had the strength to say no. That was the first time. You know what I mean? Like I think that's what they mean in the big book too. Like you don't want to go and try to tempt yourself and go to bars and
Right.
and see if that's different.
I'm going to go to the bar and I'm going to have a Diet Coke.
Yeah.
To prove to everybody that I can do it.
Yeah. That's not really the same thing.
You keep going to the barber shop, you're going to get a haircut.
Yeah, I was not sitting at the bar. I was not around the bar, but yeah, it's one of those things. But the more I kept doing, because I wasn't going to give up my music career.
Yeah, no doubt.
I was making a lot of money. I'm fortunately really good at it. I have fans,
and the love and the passion that we have for it.
Yeah, it's just a part of us. It's just
like I don't do it as a profession, like at your level, but it's a part of me. It's my passion. It's
right.
It's one of my biggest passions in life. I think most people that know me know how important my music is in my life. And now it brings me intrinsic value that is still that valuable to me, that I still continue to do it. However, I'm in the profession of recovery. I'm in the field of working in recovery and not a professional musician, but I still do it. That's why I felt compelled to do an episode like this, because I know that it's a really hard thing for musicians to try to do, is stay clean and sober. I mean, we see it, you see people in famous bands like Flea, like Ozzy Osbourne, Eminem, Alice Cooper. Alice Cooper just celebrated 30 years.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Eminem just celebrated
Yeah.
I don't remember. I saw it just the other day, but I can't remember what it was. But I mean, it can be done, and but it's really important to try to spread that message to the musicians who are struggling, or those that just need to hear what they needed to hear to help put that icing on that cake, to help them make that final decision that they really do want to make a change and make that commitment. So before we wrap it up, do you have any experience that somebody would view as advice for a musician looking to make the decision?
Um, I think mainly what I already mentioned when I read the big book, the little big book, the Alcoholics Anonymous book. Like, you know, uh, I think it says somewhere else in there that if you're, if you're feeling some type of way, or some kind of, say you're, what do they call it? Restless, irritable, or discontent, rid, or if you're feeling like, if you're feeling unspiritual, as Billy would call it, unspiritual, or if you're feeling some type of way, you probably don't want to go. You probably, if you feel like you're in a vulnerable spot in your life, where you could pick up a drink or do some drugs, just don't go to the wedding or to the party or to the, don't do the show, or like, what was I going to say? I wanted to mention this earlier too, is
Mention it now.
before I was going to play any shows in any bars, I knew that I had to get my act together before I did it. You know what I mean? Like, I was like, how am I going to do this? Right?
You don't mean the musical act. You meant your mental state of being and your
both.
Okay.
How am I gonna play shows around people drinking? How am I gonna go to graduation parties?
Yeah, this is what we want.
Weddings. Yeah, how am I gonna do this?
And what
succeed?
What was your answer?
Well, I talked to my sponsor. I was in AA. I would bring it up at AA meetings. I got advice from people in AA, in recovery, and they led me to the what it says in the big book, like what I read earlier. I base all of that on those passages, and there's even more in here too. Is we have another couple minutes or not really?
We're pretty much running out of time.
Okay, no problem. Yeah, it says never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful. It says that here that after all, our problems were of our own making. Bottles were only a symbol. So different things, like to read in here. It's pages 100 to 103 in the chapter Working with Others in the Alcoholics Anonymous book. It's beautiful. It explains everything, lays everything out very well, I think. You got to be spiritually fit. You got to be in a good place,
Awesome. Yeah, for all you musicians out there, it can be done. If you're looking to get clean and sober, you can still do music. You can still do live music. You can still carry on. You can still create. You will still be creative because it's a part of you.
Yeah, there's still people in AA that have 30 years that won't even go to a wedding.
That's their choice. So before we go, I wanted to ask you, you got a 5 CD changer in your car. What 5 CDs do you have in there right now? Let's make it 3.
I really don't know, because I have Spotify and I'd have different playlists.
All right.
So, and right now I'm starting a new project. So and I'm listening to all music based on my new project. So I'm listening to a lot of funk music, a lot of dance music. I'm listening to a lot of hip hop. Not really any gangster rap, because even though I like gangster rap, um, it's just a lot of swearing and stuff. So we're not going to be doing a whole lot of that stuff. But in '80s music, a lot of pop, '80s pop music,
Okay.
and current dance music. That's kind of what I'm listening to right now, just getting ideas for this new project that I'm starting.
So, do you want to promote that, or do you want to comment later on after it's going in the comment section of this interview?
Oh yeah, maybe. Yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, we're just I'm just gathering musicians right now, and
Okay.
as I've asked you to join it.
The building
Exactly.
stage.
Yeah. So, yeah, there still might be a position for you.
Hey, you never know.
You know.
All right. Well, Dan, thank you so much. I
Thank you,
think
bud.
that this is really important for us to continue to spread hope and inspiration, especially in this field of being musicians. As I was mentioning earlier, I think it's really important because it's a pretty big field. There's a lot of musicians out there, and we know how much drugs and alcohol are in that area.
Real quick, like what was always really hard for me was when I would be at band practice and they would be passing around the jar of moonshine.
Mm.
And I'd be like, oh, wow. Oh, like, that was some tough times.
Mm-hmm.
But I did it because
Mm-hmm.
moonshine was my thing.
Oh, boy. White lightning.
Yeah, that could be tough. And still, I still go to parties. My wife's family party, they have parties and, there's drinking around and, moonshine.
All right. Well, Dan, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
And if you'd like to watch YouTube, we are Art Any Recovery Topic. Please give a like and subscribe and follow us for more videos coming. Follow us on Facebook, Art Any Recovery Topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Today's art interview is a music episode sponsored by Grows on Main, located at 136 South Main Street in Butler, Pennsylvania. The shop has an inventory of common and rare plants, some you'll not find anywhere else, community-wide. As soon as you walk in, you know you're in a special place. They also have an event space, which holds events like baby showers, bridal showers, birthday parties, and much more. So come on down to Grows on Main, look at some of the wonderful plants they have, and maybe book your event.